swallowed the red pill back in 2008 and began reporting the news in front of a camera in 2019. In that time, we've seen a complete upheaval in world politics. The battle lines have changed between the illusion of left versus right to the reality of globalism versus nationalism. Despite all the information, the truth and the lies, there are two very distinct pathways emerging. Should we follow Labor and Liberal to a dystopic one-world government, or do we fight for our nationalism, unlock our hidden resources wealth and build a new Australia? With the world teetering on a knife's edge, should we solidify our relationship with the USA and become the 51st state? This is my mission statement here on Australian National Review, and I welcome you to Black Pill Me as hard as you can as we determine our future together. This is the 51st state. Hello and welcome to the 51st State, and what a background I've got behind me. Stephen Nowakowski will be joining me shortly to discuss his brand new truth map that reveals the scar that renewable energies is putting onto the map of Australia. Truly shocking when you realise just the magnitude of how it's meant to be environmentally friendly, but anything but. An outspoken photographer, Stephen, will be here to explain that as we admire the beauty of his work in the background and many other images as we go. Well, what a day it is for news around the world. A peace deal coming out of Israel and Gaza, with many praising Trump from all sides of the political spectrum, not being able to criticise at this stage, but hold my beer, because I'm sure there will be Democrats out there telling us that it's bad to have peace, of course, just as when Trump said earlier that maybe we'll take the guns away from the trans people. Well, that, of course, had the Democrats defending gun rights, didn't it? So you can't be right on everything, Democrats, who always deserve that they think that they deserve to be able to hold two sides on every issue to be right all of the time. Well, it doesn't work anymore when you have people calling for a Nobel Peace Prize for the president, the one that everyone gets Trump derangement syndrome about. Funny how this really works. Well, we've learnt today, firstly, that Letitia James, after also has been indicted on a single count of fraud. We'll get into that shortly, and we're going to start now our coverage before we meet Stephen on the updates. Here is Marco Rubio talking about the peace deal earlier.
You know, I don't know one day perhaps the entire story will be told about the events of yesterday, but suffice it to say, it's not an exaggeration that none of it would have been possible without the President of the United States being involved. Began with your trip to the Middle East, where these relationships were forged with partners in the region, personal relationships, close relationships that created the foundation where all of this was possible. Where I think this really took a turn. Remember, a month ago, no one thought this was possible. Where it really took a turn about a month ago, less than a couple weeks ago, is when we were at the United Nations, and you convened a historic meeting, not simply of Arab countries, but of Muslim-majority countries from around the world, including Indonesia was there, Pakistan was there, and created this coalition behind this plan. Then on that following Monday, you met with the Prime Minister of Israel here, and that plan was presented. And then, of course, our great negotiating team followed up on it. In the interim, again, perhaps the stories will be told, perhaps they will never be told. The President had some extraordinary phone calls and meetings that required a high degree of intensity and commitment, and made this happen. And I think what's important to understand is that yesterday what happened was really a human story. There's a geopolitical aspect to it, there's no doubt about it. It creates the conditions for Gaza to one day be a normal place again, and people to have a better life, and Israelis to be safe. But yesterday was a human story. And because of the work you put in, and honestly, not only is there no other leader in the world that could have put this together, Mr. President, but frankly, I don't know of any American president in the modern era that could have made this possible. Because of the actions you have taken unrelated to this, and because of who you are and what you've done and how you're viewed. And this weekend, because of that, at some point very soon, we are going to see 20 living human beings emerge from the darkness into the light for the first time in 2 years. And that is because not only were you used the credibility and the power and the prestige of this office and the relationships you created, and you committed yourself to making it happen. And I think it will go down as a historic moment in the history of our country, and something our country should be very proud of, that we have a president that's committed to not just peace, but to the human aspect of reuniting these families. My last point on this is just a couple of days ago, Secretary Lutnick hosted us all, many of us, at the Kennedy Center. And we have these families, we've interacted with them for so many years, for 2 years now. And the stories are heartbreaking, both whose families are alive and those who are deceased as well, who want their relatives back so that they can complete the process of grieving. And we had all hoped that perhaps that was the day that we would have an announcement for them on the anniversary of the 7th. But I know you were able to speak to some of those families last night. And I just hope the whole nation understands how incredibly proud they should be of their president and of their country for the role that they've played. And I don't want to let this moment pass, Mr. President, without also noting the incredible work of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. They're an incredible team working together, facing some substantial impediments to even being there this weekend and doing it. Let me just leave it at that. And they've done a great job on your behalf, Mr. President. They deserve a tremendous amount of credit. But thank you for what you've done for the world.
Thank you very much, Rose. I appreciate it.
Yeah, big comments there from the Secretary of State. Meanwhile, Hamas leadership has commented as well.
Happy to announce that we have reached a deal for ceasefire to put an end to the aggression and also to proceed to a permanent ceasefire and the withdrawal of the army, and to allow the aid to enter to Gaza and to open the Rafah crossing from both sides.
Meanwhile, over at Morning Joe, Micah couldn't resist Micah face as she was put in her place.
The deal that President Trump is announcing played a key part in negotiating. It is a significant change. This war was blocked for 2 years. President Biden, who preceded him, was unable to find a way to stop it. President Trump found that way by being tough on both sides. And he'll take a victory lap for sure over the next few days, but it's deserved. There's no way that I can see that this would have been done without Trump's pressure in the final hours.
And now we get to go over to CNN to watch Dan Goldman squirm.
That this was not doable when President Biden was in office.
I think the biggest problem that the President Biden had is there was no pressure from Qatar, from Turkey, from Egypt. They were actually facilitating in many ways what was going on. And that is really ultimately how it all came together.
So, I mean, but I think by saying that, it's sort of an acknowledgement Trump has changed that dynamic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think
absolutely.
that.
I mean, he's clearly.
I don't know how he,
changed
and I think there's a lot that remains to learn about what prompted that change, but I do agree, yes, somehow, some way that changed.
Meanwhile, Letitia James, the New York Attorney General and Donald Trump foe, well, she's been indicted for one count of bank fraud in relation to manipulating mortgage finance to claim 2 principal places of residence and a better deal. She, of course, has denied this and is going to contest it in court, but this is breaking news that has just been released today. Meanwhile, President Trump has released this video about Chicago. Now, if the world is going to praise Donald Trump for bringing peace to a region that hasn't seen peace in thousands of years, but yet at home there is calls that there may well be an insurrection and state and local leaders not defending the authorities, as in ICE agents, meant to do their job as ordered by the Commander-in-Chief, does that mean that there is no peace at home? And does that mean there's an insurrection and the entitlement for the President to send in the military? Are we going to that space? How can it be that the Democrats, who want to claim the moral high ground in a world where there's Middle Eastern peace, are the ones creating and throwing the bullets and the guns and the weapons and the rocks at the peacemakers? How does any of it make sense? Let's take a look now.
Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent. We have a governor that refuses to admit he has problems. Everybody knows how bad it is. This open borders nightmare flooded our country with fentanyl and with people that shouldn't be here, some of the worst people on earth, and illicit drugs decimated American communities and left us with the largest law enforcement challenge in our country's history.
Presidents say they have had enough.
We need to invite President Trump in. We invite the National Guard in. You know, we've had 254 deaths in 233 days. And for anyone in our community to say people are safe, that is an outright lie.
They need help badly. Chicago desperately needs help. We don't want to lose Chicago. We're going to lose Chicago. We want to save these places. We're going to lose it. We're not going to allow this kind of savagery to destroy our society anymore. We're stopping it one by one.
Australian National Review is Australia's first real free and independent press. One with no editorial control by the elite, but a publication that can generate critical thinkers and critical debate, and hold those spreading mistruths and deliberate propaganda in mainstream media to account. News with a difference that will be educational, compelling, and create a platform for political and social change in this country, and address the real issues facing this country and the world.
Stephen Nowakowski is an award-winning wilderness photographer and conservationist. Based in North Queensland, Australia, Stephen has exhibited internationally, worked in Papua New Guinea and Timor-Leste, and collaborated extensively with other world-class photographers and also with traditional owners. His spectacular works are in demand around Australia and the world and remind us of the precious natural wilderness on our doorstep. He's also the creator of this brilliant truth map to understand the realities of renewable energy, and he joins me now here on the 50. Well, how about that, Stephen Nowakowski? Great to see you again. The work that you do is immense, because you just describe the absolute beauty, and one wonders how it is that people can't put two and two together. That truth map just looks like Australia has been scarred.
Oh, it's huge, and I suppose I've always been interested in maps. I've got an associate diploma in cartography, which is map making. And we hear so much about the Integrated System Plan, the ISP, that is the holy Bible of Chris Bowen's energy transition. So when you see the graph, you know, it's really big. There's a lot of wind, there's a lot of solar, there's a lot of utility solar, rooftop solar, a lot of BESS battery capacity, offshore wind. And when you look at the graph, you see how huge the installed capacity needs to be with renewables. But from my background, I want to see that in a spatial footprint across Australia. How does that correlate with impacts on the ground? And no one has been doing this work. And what started off as a very small project, just mapping the renewable energy projects across North Queensland, where I live, quickly escalated into a national mapping obsession, I suppose. And it sort of started with a few regional groups wanting maps done for their regional areas, particularly in central Queensland. So I did some mapping for them, and then the communities in Western New South Wales around Oberon and central New South Wales wanted some mapping. So I did it for them. This is all volunteer, free, mind you. And then it escalated into just doing the whole of Australia. And I quickly realised that no one is doing this. So the Federal Department of Environment, Chris Bowen's department, the Energy Department, no one is doing this spatial footprint mapping. And I'm a conservationist. I've done a lot of volunteer work in conservation groups, and And even the conservation groups are completely captured by this rollout of renewables. They're not asking any questions. And there's no pushback against the projects that are even in some of the really bad areas, in really high biodiverse areas. So I thought I had to do this. It had to be done, because if no one is doing it, well, I have to do it. And so with the team that I've got up here, Rainforest Reserves Australia, we've got some great volunteers, and we've all put our heads together and worked on this as a collaboration. And we've now released it to the world through this website. And it's something that we're very, very proud of, extremely proud of. I think we've done something that hasn't been done before. It's something that should have been done by industry. It should have been done by Chris Bowen's office. It should have been done by the conservation sector. And we've done it. And what it does is showcase to regional Australians where projects are going in their backyard, because they are being kept in the dark. Regional Australia do not know what's going on. And the reason I know that is because these developers make it so hard to find the data. It is very hard. These developers change company names. They change the names of the projects. They move the developments around. What they do is they get the projects to a point where it gets, the host of the land gets signed up with a non-disclosure agreement. The neighbours get signed up. No one talks. It's all top secret. It then goes through state, and then it's done in a very fast-tracked way. And by the time it hits that fast-track, through the legislation at state level, it's all over. And the local residents don't even know what's hit them. And this is happening right across Australia. And what this mapping is showing is that there's actually 31,000 wind towers proposed and existing. There's around, I think, 6,000 towers already existing. And there's another 24,000 towers proposed across the continent. And really no one's actually done what we've done and actually showed those towers across the country. It also hopefully will open up the eyes of urban areas, like our friends that live in urban areas in the cities. You know, we hear so much about pushback from regional communities against renewable projects, and we hear that they get dismissed by our friends in the cities. Oh, you know, well, they just need to do the heavy lifting. You know, they need to build the infrastructure, and we need to meet these targets, and we need to reach net zero, and we need to get off coal. And if regional communities can't do it, well, then they get criticised. But what I want to show to our city folk is that these regional communities have every right to feel like they're being steamrolled into being the industrial hosts of this infrastructure. And it is industrialisation. This is industrial energy generation. And that's what the land zoning is for these projects, industrial energy production. So we're turning these regional areas into industrial zones, and our city friends need to understand that and have sympathy with our regional communities. Yeah.
Steve, the picture there is astonishing. When you look at that, it almost looks like you've slipped and fallen over at South Australia there, with that huge amount of yellow that you can see on the bottom of the screen above the bite. And the same as you come around under Victoria there's an enormous amount of coverage. And it's all in these sort of peak real estate zones, if you will. And if it's meant to be conservationist, if it's meant to be environmental, why does renewable energy get a free pass in terms of this industrialisation? Is it invisible in the eyes of the green movement, for example, or is it given a free pass? Why is it so misunderstood and so biased?
I struggle with this all the time, and I think it's twofold. There's two parts to this. Firstly, you've had 20 years of conservation groups marching in the streets for climate action. And now all of a sudden we're seeing the floodgates open up to industrial renewables. And it's been done so fast that the conservation groups don't know how to now respond and say, oh, look, yes, we've been fighting for climate action, which means huge, big industrial scale renewable projects, but can we stop now and make sure it's all going in the right place? And that's a really big problem. They can't find the nuanced language to try to say, look, biodiversity is far more important than climate change at the moment. Like, can we just take a big deep breath, stop, take stock of what's going on, and work out and try to find a way through this mess, because this is an ad hoc, random, chaotic process, this rollout. And secondly, I believe the entire conservation sector has been captured financially by organisations like the Sunrise Project, Boundless Earth and Groundswell. So the Sunrise Project is an organisation that was set up to raise funds, to collect money and then distribute those funds out into all the conservation groups. The Sunrise Project is heavily connected to organisations like Get Up, and it was actually co-founded by one of Adam Bandt's advisors, and Hepburn, who was an ex-director of Greenpeace here in Australia. They were the founders of that group, and what they've done really effectively is to set up an organisation that raises money through a charitable trust, a charitable organisation, and then distribute those funds. And those funds are being distributed to like the Queensland Conservation Council, Wide Bay Conservation Council, the Environmental Defenders Office, the Australian Conservation Foundation, and there's strings attached to that funding that you can only campaign for wind, sun, and batteries, for those three technologies. If you campaign against any of those projects, your funding gets stopped. And if you campaign for any other zero emissions technology like geothermal or nuclear, also your funding gets stopped. And the reason why I know this is because I used to work in Greenpeace and the Australian Conservation Foundation as an external contractor, as a photographer for those groups. And I had very deep ties with the conservation sector. And I know that the organisations like the Sunrise Project have very big sway over the conservation groups. Also, too, there was a group called the Coalition for Conservation, and they mentioned nuclear publicly as being a zero emissions technology that should be a part of this solution and as a part of our debate. And very quickly, their funding was stopped by the Sunrise Project because they mentioned nuclear as being a solution. So it's very well known that the Sunrise Project has captured many of these green groups, and I've seen it firsthand. So they're caught between funding and advocating for wind, sun, and batteries. And also, too, even if you took that aside, I really don't know how they can turn around after 20 years of campaigning for renewable projects and then now campaign against renewable projects. My response to that is you either care for biodiversity and forests or you don't. And they should be standing up for biodiversity regardless. And if it means not receiving funding, so be it. If it means turning around from 20 years of advocating for renewable projects, well, so be it. Our biodiversity is far more important. And my attitude is, well, we've already cleared so much of this continent, and we have so much degraded land already. We shouldn't be going and putting in projects into areas of high biodiversity. But also, that also applies to places of high value agricultural land. And as you saw on your map, all those yellow dots, they're all wind towers. So they're proposed projects. And they're going into really big areas of high value agricultural land. And that should also be protected. So I think what this mapping is showing is that we're seeing these projects being rolled out into not only high value agricultural land, high biodiverse areas, and in the process fragmenting regional communities. And we just need to stop, take stock, and get proper energy engineers in the room to work out a way forward with this.
Steve, what I'll do is now I'll play a screen recording that was recorded a little while ago. It's a little bit clumsy because it's me doing it, but I'll just get you to speak over it and just explain, because the purpose is not just a two-dimensional photograph. This is totally interactive, and you can zoom in as close as you want, literally into your own backyard, to see what's happening in your local community. Before I show it, though, how many hours work was involved to create this?
Oh, this is three years.
It's immense.
Of volunteer work. Like, I work as a photographer, so in between, on my weekends and hours after work, digitizing in all these footprints. And it couldn't have been done without the help of regional communities. Because, like I said, it is very hard to find these projects. So I've had many regional communities out there email me projects that are happening in their backyards, and then I was able to digitize in all the data. So it's been a great collaborative effort, and it's all volunteer work, and this is 3 years of work. Yeah.
Well, it certainly looks like 3 years. It is immense. Now, for viewers that want to have a look at it themselves, you'll notice the URL at the bottom of the screen. Please take note of it, and you'll be able to locate it. It's something that you want to keep in your favourites. Let's take a look. Steve, you can speak over this.
Yeah. So all the yellow areas are proposed either solar farms or wind towers. You'll notice that big chunk of country there in the Nullarbor in Western Australia. That is what they call the Western Green Energy Hub. And that consists of 3,000 wind towers and around 15,000 hectares of solar. And that actually threatens the World Heritage values of the vast, beautiful limestone caves underneath that Nullarbor plain. And we have ecologists racing against the clock right now, trying to get that listed as a World Heritage area before those wind towers go in. There's also, over on the far west of the coast, the Murchison Green Energy Hub. That's, I think, around 1,000 wind towers with an offshore wind farm as well. And Chris Bowen, our energy minister, has already offered those international offshore developers $800 million in taxpayer funding to underwrite that project. It's absolutely criminal. That pink line there where the cursor is, that's Copper String 2. That's being built right now by the state government. I think that's had a cost blowout, and that's now around $12 billion. And you would have seen that purple or that pink line going up right through the centre of the Northern Territory. That goes up to Singapore, and that is Cannon Brooks, the billionaire's pet project, who he wants to transport electricity from a very big solar installation in the Northern Territory, and ship that through through undersea cabling right up through up into Singapore, and that's, I can't remember the figures for that. It's like $20 or $30 billion. It's crazy stuff. And I can't see that ever getting off the ground. It can only get off the ground if it gets subsidised by taxpayers, which is what all these projects need. None of these projects stand on their own 2 feet. They all need subsidising by the federal government. And just yesterday, Chris Bowen announced 20 new renewable projects across Australia that will be underwritten by the Capacity Investment Scheme. And I'm absolutely gobsmacked, because the Moa Creek wind farm in central Queensland, a place that I've visited, it's a place of great beauty, fantastic country, and now that has been underwritten by taxpayers, even though the environmental approvals have not been granted yet by the Federal Environment Minister. It's absolutely crazy. And if this was a coal mine and it was being underwritten by taxpayers, yet it hadn't even been approved by the Environment Minister, the conservation sector would be screaming. But we have a wind farm that's being underwritten that hasn't even been approved yet. It's absolutely crazy. And we're in this mad rush, and we're smashing up the country and fragmenting regional communities. It's crazy.
Steve, just looking there on that map, is it possible to calculate how many wind towers there actually are across the country, or at least planned?
No, what I've done, you can actually zoom right in and click on wind towers and find out who the proponents are and all that. But in terms of tabulating all that data, no, I don't have that functionality. But I've had a lot of advice over the last couple of days on things that I could show. Like, for example, the state boundaries are missing. So I've got to put the state boundaries on there. What I also want to do is put on the regional energy zones. So each state has their big regional energy zones. And these are big ellipsoid circles that cover big, vast chunks of the state.
Yep.
And all the renewable projects are supposed to be congregated into these little tight areas. But as you can see there on the map, it's all rubbish. None of this is being done with any plan. But what I have got on the Rainforest Reserve's website is I've actually tabulated a lot of that key data, such as how many turbines and how much land to be occupied in it and everything. Yeah.
I mean, off this particular screenshot here in Rainforest Reserves Australia is where you're headed if you want to get hold of it. The way that you've built this here with your features, your layers, etc., and you can switch things on and off, and you can see them there, and it gives you a good idea of the interactivity. And you saw earlier the way that you can zoom right in. But if you were to look at the centre of Australia where there's absolutely nothing and wonder why it is you couldn't start, if you can build these huge transmission lines internationally, why you couldn't build them internally if you were to set up nuclear power, for example, and dare we even speak about such a term. But Steve, where do you sit as a conservationist with modern nuclear power yourself? Let's say, for example, you woke up tomorrow in an alternate reality and you are Chris Bowen, you're the Minister for Energy, let's say, or for green energy. What would you do and how would you incorporate, if you would, nuclear?
I'd stop this energy rollout. I'd stop all these renewables, absolutely stop it, because what we're doing is and this is what Andrew Dyer said recently, the Commissioner for Infrastructure, we're going to end up with stranded assets and a duplication of assets, power lines going nowhere. So I'd stop it all, just stop, and then get proper energy engineers in the room because they've been excluded in this energy debate. And I'd get nuclear energy into the mix. And what I'd like to see is, if we could start all over again, I'd have completely new transmission infrastructure across the country, but we've already got this legacy infrastructure. So we would be looking at putting nuclear energy, well, basically next to retiring coal plants. So as coal plants retire, I'd like to see coal plants extended for as long as they can, because that they've still got a lot of life left in those coal plants. So push them out for as long as possible. And meanwhile, start construction on nuclear plants next to existing coal-fired generators. And the beauty about that is we can then utilise that existing transmission infrastructure. And I think that's the way to go. And I used to be anti-nuclear, but what I've done recently, now that I'm very interested in energy, I've had to put all my ideology aside, talk to energy engineers, people who work in the nuclear industry, and we have some of the best nuclear engineers in the world, actually, here in Australia. The University of Melbourne, they've got some great nuclear engineers. We've got people like Steve Wilson and so forth, Addie Patterson, Helen Cook, Jasmine Diab. They're amazing nuclear scientists who are consultants to the nuclear industry all around the world. So we've got some homegrown talent here to tap into, and I've had great discussions, and all those fears about nuclear are completely, for me, dismissed. So the fear around nuclear waste, for example, nuclear waste is a political issue. It's not an engineering issue. Nuclear waste is managed fine in many, many countries, and countries deal with the waste in different ways. It's not an engineering or technical issue. It's a political issue. Things like costs, for example, in Poland's embarking on their very first nuclear reactor. They're a non-nuclear nation, and they've just started this year, 2025, in building their first Westinghouse AP1000 reactor. It's going to be one of three, so 3 gigawatts, and they'll have their first reactor operational by 2034 at a cost of $10 billion US. Indonesia, the Philippines and Thailand, they've just indicated they're going to be moving down that path of nuclear energy. So all of our closest neighbours are moving in that direction. So I think it's just a no-brainer. And for me, that's what gives me hope, really, is that nuclear is really the way that we can provide abundant, cheap energy long-term, because renewables aren't going to do it.
This is the great sticking point, isn't it? Because what you've done is you've exposed what appears to be a form of political zealotry, that what's dismissed, how you're included in the big club of this unlimited pot of money. And at the same time, you've described what clearly is a great big money tree for governments to continue to build power at the background, to give deals to those that go along to get along, and those that want to build cables, lines, transmission line all the way to Singapore. And yet when you consider that nuclear could be the answer, and the fact that we have virtually unlimited uranium in our country, you've alluded to something else that's a major problem in our country now, is that financial nihilism, particularly amongst younger people in this country, the belief now that they can't achieve an Australian dream, and partly to do with the cost of living, the cost of housing, etc. Now, if you are able to revalue your resources, particularly, and realise that uranium's got real value for Australians, then it changes things up, because you can restructure a deal that the benefits go back to the Australian people. You've mentioned a lot recently, you've gone from conservationists now to asking questions of engineers. But given that that you're looking at this through new lenses, therefore, have you considered the financial aspects and how a change in energy policy could benefit the Australian people as much as environmentally by going nuclear?
Well, energy is the economy. Everything we do is based on energy, everything. And if there's cost increases with energy, everything goes up. And I'm talking everything, because so if you know, right down to your local coffee at your coffee store, the cost of everything, manufacturing, transportation, everything. And so the cost of living, I can't see the cost of living ever coming down when we're going down this path of a renewables only energy grid. The cost of power can never go down, because just for example, the transmission, we need to build something like 28,000 kilometres of new transmission lines. 43% of your electricity bill is transmission and distribution. So power cannot come down. And when you start making something scarce, it becomes expensive. So renewable energy relies on scarcity. Wind and sun is scarce. It's intermittent, it's unreliable. So therefore, when something becomes intermittent and unreliable, it becomes expensive, because that energy needs to be overbuilt. It needs to be stored with batteries, and then you need more transmission to move that electricity around the nation. Then you need to build pumped hydros. We're looking at Snowy Hydro 2 that's going to blow out to probably 30, maybe $40 billion. We've got Barumba pumped hydro in Queensland that's never had any cost-benefit analysis done on it. So it's going to be very expensive energy. And that is why nuclear to me is a no-brainer, because nuclear energy has shown around the world it provides the cheapest energy. Those countries that have adopted nuclear have the cheapest electricity prices. Those countries that have renewables, which there's not many, but you look at places like California and Germany, they have the most expensive electricity prices. And in places like Germany, they've gone down this path really hard. They need gas, and they need nuclear from other. They need nuclear from France through their cable, through the transmission lines. But the funny thing with Germany is that even though they've now spent well over $1 trillion on renewable energy, they are still one of the highest CO2 emitters in Europe. And that's what we're seeing here in Australia. We've only actually decreased CO2 emissions by 2% since, I think, 2015 or whenever it was, the latest. So the way that we're reducing emissions is through clever accounting. So as part of the Kyoto Protocol and then the Paris Accord, the way that we're meeting our obligations is by not clearing forests and keeping carbon sequestration in the ground in the shape of forests. And then if you look at the last climate report, the only way we're going to meet our climate emissions targets is by reforesting agricultural land with trees to suck CO2 back out of the atmosphere. And it can't be done. You know, I can't remember the actual amount of land, but you're talking about millions of hectares. So even going down this path of renewables only isn't even going to meet those goals of bringing CO2 emissions down. Germany's tried to do it. They've failed. We're going down this path of failure. And so nuclear, as far as I'm concerned, nuclear is the no-brainer. And also what we're trying to do is only reduce our emissions from our domestic electricity generation. That's 1/3 of our CO2 emissions. The other third of CO2 emissions are our transportation and agriculture. We haven't even touched that yet. So for us to try to get CO2 emissions out of our transportation fleet across the country, which assumes we need to go to electric vehicles, we need vastly more electricity. So how are we going to do that? Are we going to put out another 50,000 wind towers out into the desert and then move that electricity along in really expensive transmission lines? It just none of this makes sense to me. I'm not an energy engineer, but just looking at this from the outside looking in, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
It feels like that the way forward in the motor vehicle industry is to drive a Flintstones mobile with a solar panel on the canvas roof. That seems to be the idealistic approach. And I think that's where we are at the moment is a great big political split where those that haven't held power for a long period of time have got in and have gone full environmental zealotry. The globalist movement effectively pushing the exact same thing. But in other parts of the world where nuclear has been used and is being used, and yet here in Australia it's like the great guinea pig result, because we've been so anti-nuclear for so long and it's illegal still in this country, that therefore that we become the one that to do the great big push, an island nation away from everyone else. But it's not until that, Stephen, that you create the truth map that you can actually get a feeling for what's really going on here, and we can no longer pretend. What we'll do is we'll take a quick break and we'll return, because there's a whole lot more to discuss about what do we do with all of these wind turbine towers after their 15 to 20 year cycle, given that it's a huge scale. We'll ask that question and a whole lot more. Don't go anywhere. This is the 51st State. 51st State. Behind me, you can see one of the many beautiful pictures taken by photographer Stephen Nowakowski, and you can check that out at his website, stephennowakowski.com.au. Steve, I'll bring you in right now. Just beautiful to look at the photography yet again. But we're talking about something else completely different, and the waste now in relation to these wind turbine towers. If we're looking at a nation with all of this yellow indicating such towers and a lifespan of only 15 to 20 years, which beggars belief, where are all these towers going to be put? Are they going to be taken out into the middle of Australia and build a big metal tower? Are they going to be dug underground? Are they going to be melted and repurposed? What's going to happen with them?
I don't know. No one has been able to answer that question. I ask this question all the time. And in the approval processes for these wind farms, there is no there's no decommissioning plan. So the decommissioning plan is an agreement that the wind farm company has with the host landowner. Okay?
Yeah, right.
So, and all these wind farms are set up as separate proprietary limited companies. So they're all designed to fail. They're all designed to go into liquidation, administration, or receivership without bringing down the host company. So, in 20 years' time, if a wind farm if the wind towers are all seized up, and I've seen this happen where wind towers don't work anymore, they're basically just left there because it costs a lot of money to bring them down. And if the landowner at the time doesn't push the developer to decommission, well, then I don't know what happens. Don't know. I've seen wind towers being brought down in Europe, and what they do is they lay explosives around the base of the tower, and they explode the tower, and then it gets dropped down like a tree, and then chopped up. And if it can be recycled, so be it. But there is no there's no plan that I've ever seen on how these turbines are decommissioned. But I'll tell you a quick story. I was up on the roof of my place just the other day, pulling down solar panels that are 14 years old with an electrician. So I've had solar panels on the roof for 14 years. The capacity factor of those was shocking. There was no really, they were down to like 10% capacity factor. So I got an electrician to come in, have a look at the panels. He said they're buggered. So I phoned up the installers that installed them 14 years ago. They're gone. They're long gone. I phoned up the solar panel manufacturers. They don't exist anymore. So I drove out to my local dump here at Mareeba in North Queensland. I said, look, I've got 24 240-watt solar panels. I need to dispose of them. And they said, look, it's $10 each to dispose here in the rubbish tip. And I said, well, do they get recycled? And she said, no, they go straight into landfill. And that's here in my local area. So what we've mapped is 540 million solar panels in the pipeline for Australia.
Wow, Steve. So just on that, to dispose of those in the future at today's dollars, you're talking 5.4 billion in tip fees. So the tip's not going to be too upset about that. But that's not the message, is it? But isn't it ironic that when it's environmental and there's money to be made, everyone just zips their lip and that's it. They're not going to say anything. But you've just exposed the point. 540 million solar panels going straight into landfill. We had to do the same thing during COVID. Our solar panels on the roof were useless. We had to replace them, and we took off about the same amount, and we put on more. And we know that in 10 years' time, that's where they're going to go. They have to come off again, and around you go again. But none of this makes any sense. But the fact that you've described something horrific, that these companies are designed to collapse financially and to go into receivership, liquidation, or some other form of being shut down, and you just feel like that the poor farmer's going to get left holding the bag. They've been taking a lease fee to put these towers on their land, and they're going to be told, well, it's on your land, it's your responsibility, or we're going to punish you by taking your land off you. Like, it just feels like we're part of this green mafia, Steve.
We sure are. And also, too, another point is that there is no rehabilitation plan at federal level either. So when a wind farm is approved, there is no obligation for an environmental bond, a bond payment. So in the mining sector, as you probably know, there's environmental bonds placed in a trust. So if a coal mine goes belly up or a copper mine or whatever, there's some money available to clean up the site. Renewable energy projects have no environmental bonds. There's nothing. So what I'm seeing and witnessing is the blasting out of ridgelines and mountaintops for wind towers. Yet they'll end up just being quarry sites at the end. They won't be rehabilitated. There is no money for rehabilitation.
And yet this is the same old. So for those like the Chris Bowens of the world that are taking the moral high ground and then being exposed for having no rejuvenation or rectification plans in place, it feels like that they know that their time is limited and they'll be long gone when the environmentalists are there to be held to account. Given that, Steve, and knowing that the only way to get anything done is to ask a busy person in your lifetime, have you ever considered any political aspirations, for example, or is there any politicians out there or would be that you would support in coming up with a new plan to counter what we're seeing by the current Labor government?
Look, because I'm very involved with Rainforest Reserves Australia, and we're a non-political charity, and I really can't endorse anybody. However, look, I support any politician that can basically stop this rollout and try and introduce a proper energy plan for this nation. And look, there's politicians out there right now, and I can't mention names. I'm sorry about that, but there's politicians doing great work, and they have my support. But I can't endorse politicians. But we just need. What I want to do is break through to the Australian Greens Party and wake them up from their slumber, and knock some sense into them, because at the moment they've really got no idea about energy. They've got no idea at all. And we just saw Larissa Waters on the TV, I think it was Insiders the other day, last Sunday morning, being questioned about, say, the Robbins Island wind farm. And she really had no idea. And I don't think she really has no idea. So they need to really wake up. The National Party and One Nation, for example, they know what's going on. They're at the coalface in regional communities, talking to regional people. They're witnessing firsthand the blasting of mountains for wind towers, the vast amount of land going under glass for solar. So, the coalition, One Nation, they seem to get it. The Liberal Party are very slow off the blocks. I don't know where they're at the moment. There is no effective opposition federally. And Chris Bowen has been able to get to where he has been because there has been no effective opposition. No one is questioning him. And it was only yesterday, for the first time, that Chris Bowen has been held to account. And this has been a result of this mapping. So Dan Tehan, the Shadow Energy Minister, asked Chris Bowen yesterday in question time, where is his map? What is the spatial footprint? How many hectares need to be covered in glass in Australia? And he could not answer the question, and he made a complete fool out of himself. And that's about time. It's about time the Federal Liberal Party stood up and started asking these hard questions, because at the moment they're just completely missing in action. So,
It's an extraordinary time, isn't it? First of all, Steve, in your lifetime, I can't imagine that you ever would have been critical of the Greens and thrown praise at the coalition, and yet here we are. And at the same time that you're able to stand above it from the purpose of the actual work that you're doing. And it's not about left or right or wrong or anything like that. It's about looking after Australia first and the environment as a conservationist, and more power to you for to shining great light. Now, before I let you go, I just want to play a short little, it's just some overlay. You'll be able to speak over it. These are some of the beautiful photographs that you've taken. And the last time I think we spoke was, leading up to Christmas. And I can't think of a more beautiful beautiful gift for somebody to get onto your website. Have a look at this. This is an example of some of the work. StephenNoakowski.com. There you go, is the correct name for the website. And just some of the beautiful photos that you've taken there that you can pick up. And I understand you've got calendars, and you can also you can have them printed on canvas or acrylic as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, so I do a whole range of calendars. So calendars are available through most newsagents across Australia, the Calendar Club kiosks in all the major shopping centres. So that's what I do. So I produce a lot of calendars, diaries, books. I work with great conservationists, helping them publish their books on natural history. So I'm very fortunate to do what I love, and it's because I'm out in the field documenting these beautiful locations that I'm also exposed to what's happening with the renewable energy rollout, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
It just seems the great irony that someone that is born to do this work becomes a critic at the exact same time that the government finally thinks that the floodgates have opened for the work that you set yourself up to do, and yet it's entirely a disservice to the Australian people, as we can attest to here on the truth map. That I'll just put up the details one more time on the screen for everyone. Please go to rainforestreserves.org.au/renewables truth map. You'll be able to locate it if you can arrive at rainforestreserves.org.au, and also go to StephenNoakowski.com. Very important information. But Steve, thanks for your time today.
Well, thanks, Jason.
Always enlightening and a breath of fresh air when so many people are overwhelmed on a daily basis. But when it comes down to the usual things, putting food on the table, the environment, money in your pocket, it always comes down to the same thing. And you've explained in beautiful detail with wonderful pictures behind everyone so they can engage and talk to their friends that this is an error, and that truth map will be something that you'll be able to present to your friends at long last, to be able to ask the appropriate questions of your politicians to work out, why are our power bills going up? Why is our country being scarred? And why are you pretending that this is the answer when it's not serving anyone? And that's where we are, Steve. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, we will conclude today's show right there. Please check out ANR.news, ANR headlines on X, my own one, Jason Q Citizen 1, and check out Steve's details there, because there are some wonderful, wonderful, beautiful things there that you will really enjoy. We'll see you all on the next show. Thank you.